Hi, I'm Francine, and I'm live from BG's Cafe here in downtown Oxnard, the heart of Oxnard, and I'm here with Table Talk. And my guest today is Mike Hobbs. He's from Liewen Law Group, and he's here to talk today about how to keep people in their homes. He's here to help you stop going to the banks, stop dealing with people that don't know what they're doing. And Mike, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you do?
You bet. Thank you very much for having me. It's a great morning, and thanks for inviting me on the show. Mike Hobbs, I'm with Liewen Law. I'm the general manager, and my background is in real estate primarily, banking for a majority of that time, and contract negotiations. I worked in the NFL as a contract advisor representing NFL athletes to the particular ball clubs that they were trying to get jobs with. So a sports agent, kind of Jerry Maguire, which works real well with this because transitioning into, with this epidemic in our economy, a lot of people losing their jobs, not having the income that they did have, or any type of hardship, they're not able to make their mortgage payments. That's been a real problem over the last 5 years. And with that epidemic came the revitalization of modifications, mortgage modifications. And that's what we specialize in at Liewen Law right now, is helping people stay in their homes through modifications.
Now, what makes you different than some of these other places that advertise, we could keep you in your home for a small fee, upfront cost, places you go to where you bought your house,
Right.
we'll help you. Give us $3,000, we'll help you stay in your home. What's different about you?
Yeah, you mentioned cost, little fee, $3,000. I don't think it has anything to do with the money. What it has to do is the integrity of the individual and their background. It's having the knowledge, and the problem is the consumers are in hardship, and they're usually not thinking very well. A homeowner that's lost a job is faced with something they never thought they would be faced with before. Frankly, it goes against our anthropology, which is eat all your vegetables, get good grades in school, don't lie, cheat, or steal, and pay all your debts on time. So when people are faced with that moment of, I may not be able to make my mortgage payment, they feel bad. They lose all the normal senses that give them, I think, that understanding of how to judge people. And so they're open to hearing just about anything from anybody. So the money's not the big thing. It's finding somebody that has an individual and or a corporation, a law firm primarily, that has the ability to disseminate the information and knows and has the experience of working with the banks. And to the point, what makes us different primarily is our staff. I've assembled a group of former mortgage bankers with experience over a couple of decades. The staff has been with me for between 12 and 16 years, so we have an affinity for one another. And that's important because when you're really taking on something as emotional as that comes with the fear of losing your home, you have to have people that work well together. And that's really what we do at Liewen Law. We work well with our clients, and we work very well with the banks because we're former mortgage bankers and we have that vernacular.
Now, what about programs you hear about, like Keep Your Home California, or banks that are now offering loan mods after the whole crisis thing has happened? Right. What's different, or what should someone do?
Yeah, that's got a lot of different answers. I can walk you through a short brief on kind of the history of what happened. But back in '07, when Bush was still in office, they launched the H4H, the Help for Homeowners, and it failed miserably. And they were trying to create programs that were preemptive. You didn't have to be late, but you had a pending problem occurring, loss of job, but you hadn't missed your payments yet. So they created programs like that, and they failed. And then the HAMP program came out, Home Affordable Mortgage Program, and the HAMP 2, and they've had a myriad of other programs. They've had the AG decision through Bank of America and some of the other big five that provided for principal reduction. The Keep Your Home California was something that came along as well, and that's a great, it can subsidize the problem, it can help to some degree, but it really is a Band-Aid in most cases, because you're still left over after the fact. By getting money from Keep Your Home California, you're still left over with the loan you had before, which you weren't able to pay. So it really doesn't address the modification. They'll help you with that money, will go towards attempting to get a modification, but the problem really lies with the vernacular. If you as a consumer don't know the terminology you use with the bank, this is not what we were taught and we learned really Pavlovian-like in putting on your best suit and tie and going to the bank and having great credit and having money in the bank and having 2 years of job stability and saying, gosh, I'm worthy. Modifications is its own language, and it's I think, an aberration of a failed industry that really is short-lived, frankly, hopefully, but it requires you deprogramming off what we were taught in how to go borrow money, and certainly what we were taught when we applied for the mortgage that we have now failed on, the covenant that we have now broken when a homeowner doesn't make their mortgage payments. So I'm a fan of the programs. I'm not a fan of the interaction or the mechanism that is out there for the consumer, the homeowner. We've got a couple of good-looking guys here working the cameras and stuff for us here, and they have a particular skill in doing what they do. And you have a particular skill in what you do.
Yes.
And you're with Mary Kay.
Yes.
And I can't put makeup on to save my life right now, so I don't know how to do that. I understand it because I have a wife and she looks great with her makeup on, but I don't know how to put it on. So the problem exists when you have a consumer, a homeowner, who's in distress and they are fearful of losing their home. They're not thinking clearly. And then you're going to put them together with a bank who doesn't tell you the rules at all. You might give me some instructions on how to put on a base or something. Base, is that a terminology? Is that right?
We'll roll with it.
Okay, good enough. Anyway, see, I don't even know. But you don't even have them telling you what to do in any aspect, so you're frankly guessing. So you have someone who's coming together that's in distress, they have despair and discouragement, they're worried, and they're talking to the bank who's not telling them what the rules are. The transmission, the dissemination of information is askew, so you're never going to have that happen. So the programs are great, but we're putting the layperson together with the bank without any instructions, and we're hoping that they can accomplish what they try to do, which is save their home and get a new loan and modification, and it's just very difficult.
Now, what about people that don't, you and I speak English well, people who don't speak English well, the Hispanic market who were vulnerable
Right.
and trusting of people who, these are industry people, they know what they're doing,
Yeah.
they make $10 an hour and they're in for $500,000.
Yeah, that's a really, that's a great question. It's something that's near and dear to my heart. I've been in banking and real estate for almost 30 years, and back in the 80s, the majority of my clients in Oxnard, I had an office in Oxnard. I grew up here and grew up in Camarillo and Rio Mesa and Mesa Union and Ventura College. I attended all those schools.
Go Vikings.
Go Vikings. Got to do that. Once a Spartan, always a Spartan. Sorry. But you know what? It's near and dear to me because when I had my office in Oxnard, it was occurring back then. The Hispanic community doesn't have good information, not only because of the language barrier potentially, but because the information is not disseminated in their language. You don't have that in writing that way. And it's complex and it's different. So as I said earlier, it's not like borrowing money. And when I was doing this in the 80s, we used to find that the Hispanic professional typically took advantage of the lower educated Hispanic consumer to their betterment, to their benefit. And so it's near and dear to me because that happens a lot. The banks really are no different. They don't really have a protocol, nor are they inclined to really want to give information that helps you accomplish your goals. They are predisposed to want to deny a modification. And there are some technical reasons why, and I can talk about that in a minute if you like. But the technical reasons are paramount in really why anyone, whether you speak English or not, why people are likely not to get them. And statistics are about, you have a 6% chance of successfully completing a modification on your own without someone who speaks the language, the banker language. But the people that don't have the English language, I don't know. They have to reach out to somebody that they can trust, and they have to ask questions. And I think there's a series of questions in anything you do. You have to ask the third question. Why? Why is that best for me? What are the other options? Why pick left instead of right? Why the number 1 instead of the number 2? Just basic things to really vet out and determine whether that information is providing you good information or information that frankly is to benefit them only.
Now, what are some of your success stories that you have? What's your best success story
My
so
best,
far?
there's so many great success stories. I'll tell you a couple of stories because there's too many. I'll tell you a couple, okay? We did, it's kind of sad and it's good. And I'll tell you the sad one first. We have a client who came in to see me, and she was, when she comes into my office, I walk out and I invite people back into my office, and I don't watch people walk into my office, obviously. And she sat down and we started talking, and I said, why are you here? And she said, I need to modify my home. I have 2 children, and I have a husband who's working. And I said, oh, okay, what's going on? Describe the hardship. And she went on to say, well, I quit my job. And I'm thinking to myself in a split second, the business aspect of me, the business mind goes, why would anybody in this economy quit a job, right? Okay. So I started thinking, I said, well, tell me a little bit more. Why? And she said, well, it's a medical issue. And I'm going, okay, good. The business side of me, again, is kicking in. These are in nanoseconds. Okay, that's good. We can use that. And let's expound on that and see if it's something that really would work to our advantage in getting the modification. Because they're paying their mortgage on time. I talked about that earlier, about preemptive strike. That's not a lot of that out there. In other words, you can't receive as much help when you're on time as when you're late. That's kind of the basic thought of it. Well, I said, okay, well, what was it? And she says, well, I was diagnosed about a year ago with Lou Gehrig's disease. So I break down a little bit, and we're both after a couple minutes crying, and we did a pro bono case for her, and I fought the banks, and the banks didn't care that she was going to be dead in a year. They didn't care. And what was interesting for me, and as I got into my arguments, I did the statistical work, and I found out statistically with this particular bank, I get a little choked up when I'm talking, but with this particular bank, I did the stats based on the number of loans they serviced, based on the number of non-performing loans they had, meaning loans that were behind, they weren't making payments on, the number of cases diagnosed in the country and locally and in our area of Lou Gehrig's disease annually. And I broke it all the way down, and for this lender, this servicer, who was a large one, the likelihood was, based on statistical data, was 2 a year, maybe 2 a year, okay? So I thought that that was a reason enough to provide additional dispensation for this, pardon me, for this client, and it wasn't. It could have been I lost my arm in a combine yesterday, or I ran over my cat, or I'm dying of Lou Gehrig's disease, or I have a cold. They all fell under the same umbrella of motivation for providing help to the homeowner. And that was really a travesty. That's sad. And so when you really talk about what's going on out there, and everybody says, oh, I hate the banks and blah, blah, blah. And sure, I've got names of banks and T-shirts with a big circle and the line through it going, and I park out in front of them sometimes and run around. But the reality is they caught, this epidemic caught them by surprise too. But it doesn't excuse the fact that they don't have discretion and they don't have someone that can step outside the boundaries a little bit and say, this deserves dispensation in a different way. This is different than what we've been used to. Long story short is I fought them and we won. She passed away in April. And the modification saved her a little over $1,000 a month, so her husband and her 2 young children are better off for that, but it was really a sad case. And I'll end on this, and I know we got to take a break here in a second, but the other one is I had a client that came into me, and we look at these, and we don't take every case on, Francine, we just don't. So we're very careful about that. We're a boutique law firm. Antoinette Liewen, Tony, has been practicing law for 30 plus years. She won't let me go any higher than 30, by the way. She won't. It's something to do with age. I don't know.
She started when she was 15?
Yeah, exactly. That's the deal. But she also sat on the bench down in LA County, and she worked for the Public Defender's Office and also for the Attorney General Office. So she comes with a very a large background in the legal field and can help. Long story short, as the client came in and wanted the modification, I looked at her and she's disheveled. Her paperwork's a mess. It's going to be a real problem for my staff because we require you to do some work too. And she said, I want to do this, and she wasn't a candidate for us. And I said, I can't help you for a lot of other reasons, personality, mathematically, everything. She wasn't going to get them on. She needed to sell her home or do something else. She went back to her church. She prayed with her pastor. She said she came back and she forced me, literally, to do this because I told her, here's how I ended. I said, you have a 1% chance. So she went back and prayed, and she said that we prayed about that, and we said, if there's a 1% chance, then that's good enough for us, and God's going to help out. And I went, the 1% was supposed to be like bad, not like good 1%. Like, yeah, 1%, woo! No, it's 1% not going to happen. we took it on. I had her sign some disclosures talking about that, and long story short, we did work it through, and my staff came in one day and said, you'll never believe whose house we just saved. So we don't always make the right call, but we're there trying to figure out who deserves help, who can get help, who really deserves it, because some people are faking it, as you know, which also hurts the people that really need the help.
Yeah.
And that's really what we do. We place a very large value on the personal aspect of this, because people are in despair and discouragement. We're trying to provide hope.
Okay, we'll be back in a few moments.
Dad, Katy Perry is coming to town. Can we get tickets, please?
Tickets? Sure, how many?
Well, there's Hannah and Maddie and Jen and Sarah and Sarah.
Whoa, hold on. Here it comes. We can't forget about your older sister.
Thank you.
Seriously? What? I get 2 times the thank you points on each ticket. Can I come? Yep.
The Citi Thank You Preferred Card. Now earn 2 times the points on entertainment and dining out with no annual fee. To apply, go to Citi.com/thankyoucards.
Hi, welcome back. Here with Mike Hobbs with Liewen Law Group, and we're talking about how to keep people in their homes. Now, Mike, you were telling us some great stories about some people you saved.
Right.
Now, what about, there was a case we were talking about during the break about a lady who got a mod, she needed a mod, and the realtor wasn't on the level with you. Tell us a little bit about that case.
Really, yeah, those are tough ones. We were talking before the show about that, and I do want to get back to why the banks don't want to do it, because people tend to think that, it doesn't make financial sense for the bank not to modify. They're going to lose $200,000, or they're going to lose, $100,000, or whatever it is. Why wouldn't they just want to lower my payment by $500 or $1,000 instead of losing that large amount of money? I want to talk about that, so remind me about the mechanics, the banking mechanics, on why that doesn't translate to what we think as consumers. But yeah, it's unfortunate there are a lot of real estate agents out there, and I'm a proponent of real estate and real estate agents. I have my own firm, as a matter of fact, my own real estate firm. So I am very much involved in that aspect of business and what that does for people having the right agent. But there are a large number of people. We were talking a little bit about, the Hispanic population, and I describe as being taken advantage of by, I'm going to call it by their own, because the only link to trust is the dialogue, the language.
Yeah.
And in and of itself, I don't think that's enough. But unfortunately, a lot of consumers think that because they speak the same language, that professional has got their best interests, and that's the only criteria for making the decision to go with them. And that's not always the case. But in this case, we have a client who came in, can't do modification, and we referred it back to that individual, and it turns out that that individual actually had done some activity that wasn't quite right. I'll say unethical, maybe bordering illegal, but certainly unethical, in that they'd signed a purchase contract a month and a half ago and left it blank. And then when we referred back to them, because we always do with our agents, it turns out that they were forcing them to sell when there are other alternatives potentially for them. So I guess it goes back to what we were saying, Francine, earlier, that you have to really vet out, you have to question, you have to ask, and really research the people you're going to work with in any profession, whether you're buying a washing machine, a car, a modification, a home, a mortgage. You have to find people that speak the language you understand. And remember this, I'll leave you with this. There's one thing that you should always take into consideration when doing anything, frankly. And I've said this for years, decades, frankly. And it was when I was doing the high-level negotiations in the NFL. Everybody always wants to take time away from you. And so the one thing you should remember when you're a consumer is you have time. I don't care if the bank says you're going to lose your house in 5 days if you don't act. This car won't be on the lot in a couple of days, it's going to sell. Or this special is only going for 2 more days, forget it. Time is either your friend or your enemy, and you choose whether you make it your friend or your enemy. So slow down to speed up. So the advice I give anybody when they're buying anything is listen to what your salesperson is saying, and then take a time out. Leave for a day or 2. You don't have to buy. I know the impulse as consumers,
Yes.
Right?
We're going to get it now.
Yeah, cheap, easy, fast, easy, cheap is what our whole, that's, that's what TV does for us too, right? Come on, get it now. Slow down, especially something as important as your home. Financing, picking the right real estate agent, getting a modification. If the information comes through again and again and it's identical, you've probably got somebody that's looking out for your best interest. But slow down and take a break. And I think we were going to talk about why, would you like me to talk about why the banks really don't want to do modifications? And the technical aspect of it is the Treasury and the FDIC came up with an accounting policy in practice when this happened that is not public for public information, but you know, I've been in banking for 30 years and I have a lot of friends that are in higher level places in the institutions and the banks and what have you. And it's very clear that this accounting method is different for the different types of what they call troubled debt resolution. Troubled debt is a mortgage that, or frankly a credit card, it could be anything, but a troubled debt, it's not performing. You're not paying it anymore. And in the case of a modification, or I should say in the case of a mortgage, when you're not paying that anymore, that's a troubled debt. The troubled debt resolutions that are available are primarily three. There's some provisos and some add-ons to that. Three primarily are foreclosure, short sale, and modification. Well, in the foreclosure and in the short sale, the bank has a one-to-one asset to liability ratio on their balance sheet that they incur, 1-to-1. Okay, big deal. And then all the subsidies and the tax write-offs and what have you, it kind of negates that. That's why when you sit there and go, as a consumer, they're going to lose $200,000, they're going to lose $300,000 if they don't modify my home and drop it by $500. Why wouldn't they just do that? Well, you and I in a business, if we had a business together, I go, hey, we're going to lose $200,000 on this client, or we can drop the payment by $500. You and I are probably going to go, let's take the $500 haircut rather than the $200,000.
Loss, yeah.
But the bank doesn't do it because the pools are so big. Your loan, your $200,000 loss is in millions, hundreds of millions of dollars. They can take that pool and reinvest, and larger money begets larger return. So it doesn't impact them. So it's a 1-to-1 when it's a foreclosure or a short sale. It's a 10-to-1 liability to asset hit to the balance sheet when it's modified. So think about that. Balance sheet is impacted that much, 10 times greater in a deficit or a liability than it would be on one of the other resolutions. They are absolutely predisposed, their proclivity is to want to do a short sale or foreclosure. Short sale number 1, foreclosure number 2, modification number 3. Now that doesn't mean you give up, that doesn't mean you don't try, but you have to understand the other side. You have to understand your adversary. And that's in negotiating anything. You've got to understand what drives them. No one knows that. And so, but if you did know that, you know you have to set up your file in a way that meets the criteria financially and is done in a way that is frankly sophomoric. It has to be easy to understand. We can't provide them a lot of moving information in your accounts. A lot of money coming in and out of accounts throws the banks off. You're more likely not to get a modification with that type of track record. So again, keeping it simple works. But that's why they really don't care about a $200,000 or a $300,000 loss like you and I would in small business.
Now, where would I go if I'm looking to modify my home and I'm not sure about my agent, not sure about the place I went to that's in a strip mall somewhere? Where would I start to get the right information? I can't go to the bank because they're going to tell me what they want to tell me.
Right.
Who would I start with? Would I start with a consumer group, or where would I go? Where would I start?
Great question. And we're not in a strip mall, although I was thinking about it later today, but now I'm not going to. But
okay.
We're going to move our offices, but we're not going to anyway. we're actually in Camarillo down in Old Town, and we're prolific. We're not hiding. We're there. You can come in anytime, talk to us. It's free. We chat. We talk. You can get Antoinette.
You said
Liewen.
Free, right? It's
Yeah.
free. Free. Free.
Free consultation to talk about anything related to real estate, mortgage banking, modifications. Contracts, you name it, doesn't matter. Give us a call. We'll help you out. Antoinette's there. We'll get you in touch with her. You can sit down with her, and we'll talk. I did a radio show for 10 years. It was with my old partner Dan Harris. It was called Mortgage Madness, and we were consumer advocates. And I just happened to be on a radio program on Sunday morning with Ken Michaels, who's a national talk radio guy. So we're consumer, and he's a consumer advocate. We're consumer advocates, number one. But where do people go to do this? Some of the nonprofits, frankly, don't know what they're doing. I did a modification for one of the directors of a nonprofit that does modifications, if that tells you anything. So it doesn't mean just because it's nonprofit, pardon me, that it's good for you. Okay. They're still making money. So I think you really, where to go for that would be just, again, find somebody that you can trust. If you're trying to find the right real estate agent, there are questions to ask. If you want a list of questions for me to ask, you can always email me as well. I don't know if we're giving out emails today or not.
We'll post that for our guests to see.
Give me an email. If you have any specific questions, you can email me anytime, and I'm happy to respond. I can give you a series of questions to ask that will either confirm or trip up the would-be consideration for either a real estate agent, a mortgage banker, or broker, in whatever aspect of real estate you're dealing with.
Now, Mike, you don't habla español, but what about
Un
your staff?
poquito español. Un poquito.
Now, what about your staff?
Yes,
Now, if I were to
bilingual.
refer people, now, what about the paperwork? Is it all done in English, or
There's
do they
some
do it?
that's English, and there is some that's in Spanish. So we have, Marlene has been working with me an awfully long time. We also have Sochi. Don't ask me how to spell her name.
Okay,
She's been with me a long time, but I still can't spell it. It starts with an X, I know that.
we'll roll with that.
But they both speak fluent Spanish, and they also have the vernacular, because that is also some of the problem. Just because you speak the language, if you can't translate the terminology into Spanish, you can have problems. So they both are very well versed with that. So we speak Spanish in the office.
Now, do you guys come to Oxnard and do any kind of like free clinics or anything,
We-
or go to the library for a couple hours and say, hey, we're here, people?
I can't go to the library. They threw me out of the Oxnard Library a long time ago and revoked my card, so I'm not allowed back. My picture's on the wall, and so
Okay.
I can't go there. No, we really don't do any of those. We used to, and we found that it's hard to get people to come out and go, hi, my name's Bob, and I'm losing my house in front of 20 other people. It's a private affair usually. So the best way is, frankly, email me, ask questions, no obligation. I hope you get the feeling we're not selling you anything. We really do care.
Now, if I was to go, what 3 questions would I ask? What would be the 3 questions? Real quick.
What's your favorite color? How old? No. You have to ask, how long have you been in the business? I think that's the number 1. I think you also have to ask, this is probably the most important, I may not get to 3, but when was the last time you made a serious mistake in your profession, and how did you overcome it? Most people want to tell you how great they are, but they never want to tell you, I blew it, this is the mistake I made, and here's how I overcame it. So that's really, I think, those are probably the 2 questions. And then also ask them for work product. I think you should do work product, and I really do think you should get testimonials. Get testimonials that you can call. And everybody that likes you will allow people to call in most cases. Not everybody, but a large percentage of people will allow you to do that. Don't just get it in writing. Anybody can do that. Ask for those people to call directly.
Okay, I want to thank Mike for being our guest. Great time here at BG's Cafe. They're open 7 days a week right here in the heart of Oxnard. Next week, we're going to have Jack Steele with the Broman Law Group, and he's going to talk to you about immigration, some of the reform, and ways we can help people with their immigration paperwork. Thank you, and see you next week.
Thanks for having me.